So last but not least, we will cover part 4, which are the data collection protocols and all of the EPAO resources that are available to you as a user. First, starting with data collection protocols. So here we're thinking about just kind of general logistics related to doing observations. This will be different for the particulars of your own project, but typically when we think about the EPAO, we want to capture what most of the children in that classroom are experiencing for that day. So typically when we think about it, we begin when the majority of the children arrive, making sure to capture that first meal. So if the first meal starts at 9 o'clock, make sure you're there by 8:45 because you'll want to have a little bit of time to get settled and feel comfortable before rolling into that first meal. If their formal childcare day starts before the first meal, go ahead and capture that as well. And then you'll just kind of capture that in section B, which will happen temporarily before section A. In terms of ending at the end of the day, we typically end the observation when the majority of the children, and again, that's just that simple majority, so more than half have left for that day. Mostly why we do this is just to capture kind of what the formal childcare day is for most of the children in that classroom, because some will go into after school and some will be on a shorter timeline as well. When we think about the materials that you're using to do the EPAO, less is more here. You don't want to carry a lot of belongings into a childcare center for young children to then go through, and then they are through your purse and who knows what. So really you want to minimize what you're bringing into the center because you want to just kind of, again, be that fly on the wall for the observation. What we typically do is break up that observation because it's so long, and we section it off into tab dividers within a 3-hole binder. We have found that that's ideal because then it can help newer data collectors stay organized and figure out where exactly things are on a page, which is really half the battle of figuring things out on the EPAO, is just knowing what page to turn to at what time. Of course, you will need a watch to tell time with all of those timestamps. How we do it is we specify that it's a watch and not a telephone. I usually have data collectors just wear a digital watch that we can provide to them from the project if they don't have one, but preferably you would have a digital watch and not use your phone. The phone tends to be a distraction for folks and will catch the attention of children who will then want to play with it, and doesn't really reflect the project poorly, kind of signifies that you as a data collector are disengaged from your job and from them graciously allowing you to conduct a full day observation. And then last but not least, obviously you need pens, and backup pens are always good to have. When we think about general observation techniques, the goal is to be a fly on the wall. So you want to get a sense of what's happening in that classroom on the occasion where you're not there. So you want to try to be as unobtrusive as possible. You can kind of sit and stand throughout the day as you feel comfortable, but just stay out of the way. If there's a large group of kids going to the area of the classroom where you're standing or you're sitting, just maybe get up and move to a different part where you can still hear what's going on, but they're not having to climb over you to play, things like that. You want to always make sure that you're unobtrusive, but within earshot of the teacher, specifically the lead teacher, because you really want to be able to hear all of those interactions that the teachers and children are having. So you want to make sure that you can always hear the lead teacher for sure. And then last, we typically use nap time for all of the observation questions that you accumulate that aren't related to that temporal sequence. So this, you can create a running list of questions that you have for the teacher, the director, the chef, and nap time is really a great time to do that because that's when you can go look at the equipment and ask all those other different information providers all your questions. Another thing with being unobtrusive is to follow the center rules. So what does that mean? Within childcare, a big thing is hand washing. So when you walk into the classroom, you want to make sure to wash your hands. If they have a rule for any other part of the day that you pick up on, just try to blend in and do as they do. You do want to minimize any conversation and contact that you have with children. And again, this is to be that fly on the wall. But it's difficult because children are naturally curious and they'll want to know why you're there and what you're doing. And it's fine, you don't have to be rude, but you don't have to necessarily engage with them in conversation. You can redirect them and ask them, why don't they go play? And if it comes to it, just say, well, I think your teacher would like you to go play, kind of leverage what they think that they're supposed to be doing or what their teachers say that they should be doing. And teachers are very good at picking up on that too, so they can help redirect if you need to throw up the white flag and get the teachers to help as well. While this is a lot of pages on an observation form, it is data and it should be treated with respect. So you want to make sure to leave any notes that you have attached with that data collection form, any names, ID numbers. Don't leave them out, don't have them strewn across your trunk. Try to keep them together and just minimize any breach of confidentiality. And that'll depend on whatever your institutional review board, if you're working with those, will be. So everyone will have different rules as to what's allowed. But overall, we just want to make sure that we're treating the data that people allow us to collect in a respectful manner. In terms of what you should wear as a data collector, we say casual but presentable. Sometimes projects have particular uniforms, so a logo on a polo shirt and maybe khakis or something like that. Anything is really fine. You just don't want to wear short shorts and strappy tank tops. You want to make sure that you're comfortable because you're going to be in a child-sized room for the better part of the day. And you want to make sure for sure to wear comfortable shoes because you'll be outside and you'll be on your feet a lot, so just make sure comfortable shoes. And then if you have any sort of name tag from the project or from your institution, that's good to wear. Or if the center gives you a visitor's badge, just make sure that you wear that. And that helps any parent that comes in or any other sort of outside person. If they were to come into the classroom, they can easily identify you visually and know why you're there, and helps them feel a little bit more comfortable with that. And then the last thing with this is to stay engaged. And that can be quite difficult because you're scanning the entire classroom for an entire day. It can get tedious and you really have to find ways to stay focused and not kind of get lost in your own thoughts and then miss something that was really nuanced because you were kind of daydreaming. How I typically do this is I have a couple of different ways. I like to make lists, but that's just my personal style. Everyone will have their own, so it's just a matter of finding what your data collection style is. So I have a master list that's separate from all those pages that says from this time to this time they did this, and it's kind of my overview of the day and something like that, just to stay focused so that you're always, so that you won't miss something. Then in terms of once you have all of this observation data, what do you do with it? It's a lot of variables, it's a lot of pages, it's a lot of information. So how do we go about consolidating all of that and making it into a meaningful score and into meaningful information? How we do this is we take all of the individual items that are scored on the EPAO and we summarize them across the day. So circle time in the morning and in the afternoon, those are summed together to have the total amount of circle time that you get in a day. Same thing with outside time, same thing with the frequency of the practices and all those things. So the individual items bubble up to a day level score. From there, what we do is we take those day level derived variables and we assess compliance with those knapsack best practice standards. And we score those on a scale from 0 to 3, just at 4 points, so 0, 1, 2, 3. And 0 represents our minimally acceptable practice. So that's, it's fine, but it's not the best. And that goes up all the way to a 3, which is complying with our best practice. And each of the best practices match up with different day level derived variables. Not all of the variables on the EPAO match a best practice, but the vast majority do. And then those best practices fall into subcomponents. So we have a best practice around fruits and vegetables served, the frequency that fried meat is served, and those all fall under a foods served score. So we kind of combine conceptually similar best practices into subcomponents. From there, all of the nutrition is scored as one total score, and then the physical activity, outdoor play and learning, and screen time are all combined into a separate score. So we have 2 big scores overall. So to give you an example of this, we have time for indoor and outdoor play as a best practice. How we get to that is we combine the outdoor time in the morning and the afternoon. We combine indoor teacher-led physical activity, and then active center time. So that's center time where you as a data collector have rated their activity level as at least a 3. And we, like I said, assess compliance with the best practice on that 0, 1, 2, 3 scale. And so these 4 response or levels of response correspond to the self-assessment of the knapsack best practices. So the 0, you get a 0 if you have less than 60 minutes of indoor and outdoor play. If it's between 60 and 90 minutes, you get a 1. 90 to just under 120, you get a 2. And if you have 120 or above, you get a 3. So that's signifying that you're meeting that best practice. And then shown to the right is the little snippet from the self-assessment that it corresponds to. So within the PA time provided subcomponent, we also have teacher-led physical activity, again, both indoors and outdoors, and then the longest amount of time that children are required to be seated. So we take the longest bout of sedentary time that you record in that extra seated time section. And those 3 best practices all go together into the PA time provided subcomponent. Listed on this slide are the 20 EPAO subcomponents. We have 7 for nutrition and 13 for physical activities, so physical activity, outdoor play and learning, and screen time. And you can see that they kind of bubble around those provisions, practices, and policies. In terms of getting the data actually together and more of the mechanics of how these data are used within to get those scores, we have several different resources. First, we have a data dictionary, which lists every variable on, or every question on the EPAO in terms of its variable name, how we code its response options, and a little bit of information about how we store that variable within our SAS data sets. We also have an Excel workbook, and that will allow you to hand enter all of the data, which will be a lot of variables. And what it is it's broken up into several different spreadsheets. We'll go over that in just a minute. Last, we have a set of SAS scoring code. So this will combine and create that 0 to 3 best practice score, as well as all of the subcomponent scores and that total score. So all of that will be automated, and it pulls right in from that Excel workbook and does all the heavy lifting for you. In terms of the data dictionary, we try to have some conventions for naming variables, and this allows us to keep consistency and so that users can quickly identify what section of the EPAO we're dealing with and what the different levels of hierarchy are. For the left-hand side of the names, we have either EPAO or EDOC. So these ones in pink are 2 examples of a variable name. The EPAO one on the left, so what we do there is it's signifying that it's from the EPAO, then it's an underscore, and then the next signifier is B, so that's signifying that it's section B, and then question 7. And then from there, if there are different subcomponents within each section, those are tacked on at the end after another underscore. So that's part A versus part B and C of that question. So giving a little bit of context for how we name the names and how you can get information from those by just looking at the names. Similarly, for the document review, we have EDOC, signifying the EPAO document review, and then section C, question 1, would be indicated by that variable name. The data entry workbook is broken into 9 worksheets, and those are labeled by section of the EPAO observation or document review. And this is because SAS can only pull in a certain amount of columns into a SAS data set. So we have to break it up, and that's how we chose to break it up. In order to link all of these back together, you need to keep the center ID, the teacher ID, and the date all together. These have to be on each of the spreadsheets and the same across all of them to be able to link all of that data together as coming from one day and one classroom. In terms of data entry, it's a lot of information, it's a lot of cells, it's a lot of variables. So we have a couple tips to make things consistent and make it easy to use within our scoring framework. Make sure that all of your times are entered as military time, and dates are entered with 2-digit month, day, and year. That's how I've formatted all of the cells, so it should automatically go to that, but it's just easier if you go into it knowing that you have to do it that way. And then always refer back to that data dictionary for the appropriate codes for questions. So we typically use 0, 1, 2 for things. There are a couple instances where that's different, but just make sure that you're always referring back to that data dictionary so that you can know how to code a particular variable. And then we certainly need some aspect of quality control. A lot of studies will do hand entry with double coding. This would be an immense amount of work for people to double code. So even if you can get a 20% random sample to double check or to double code, that would be great. Or if you know, for example, that you're really interested in one aspect of the EPAO, maybe you want to do quality control over all of those and just cross-check what you have in the Excel spreadsheet with what the data collectors put on the paper. There are lots of different options with that, but just make sure that you're doing some sort of quality control to make sure that that extra slip of a hand and that human error that is bound to happen is not super problematic for your data. Then we move on to the scoring code. So I wrote this in SAS 9.4, and it creates all of the derived variables used for scoring. It's broken into 3 parts. We have 1 part for the observation, 1 part for the document review, and then 1 part for all of those subcomponent scores, as well as that overall nutrition and PA score. So it's 3 separate SAS code files. And what you'll need to do is enter in the path of the Excel file wherever it is on your computer or your shared drive. And that's indicated throughout with some notes, which you can see on this slide. If you're not familiar with SAS, the colors indicate different types of information. So the green are notes for your organization or for prompts from me as the coder to you as the user. Oftentimes it's to prompt you to do something. So if you see over here, you can, you're told to enter your file path here, because this proc import is a statement of code that will bring in an Excel file and then create the SAS data set that that is corresponding to the first part of the observation data. So just pay attention if there's a note to enter your file path, go ahead and do that. And you put it in right in between those 2 quotation marks and make sure you put the whole data file path. The blue, black, teal, and purple, that's all the coding language, and you don't have to worry about changing that at all. All you'll have to worry about is just those couple places where we've asked to enter your file path name. So in terms of certifying data collectors, what we typically have done in the old days, as we like to call them, this is done via a half-day in-person center visit along with the gold standard observer. So everyone goes in and does simultaneous observations of the same exact center day so that you can see, is everyone observing the same sort of thing? Are we all recording it the same way? And most importantly, are the new data collectors recording it according to how I would as the gold standard observer? Then what we do is we assess agreement between that gold standard, oftentimes me, but could be anyone really, and that trainee. And from our point of view, if the observation agreement is at or above 85% at the item level, then the data collector is certified for independent use of the EPAO. So as long as that that inter-observer agreement is at or above 85%, the data collector is good to go and to use it in the field within the projects on their own. And so that's our traditional certification process. Of course, with this new model, we have had to make some changes. So for this iteration of the EPAO, we have a self-guided certification that's available to users as well. And what we have is a series of videos that are childcare days that are typical to North Carolina. And what data collectors will do instead is they'll certify by watching these videos and coding the classroom activities on the EPAO. So we have an additional Excel workbook that's specific to the certification process. So we have our gold standard answers in it as well, and then the data collectors who are certifying can fill out their EPAO, hand enter it into the Excel sheet, and then be able to assess whether or not they hit that 85% agreement standard. We do have a day 2 set of videos in case there's no agreement on, or in case the agreement is not high enough on the first day. We do have a backup day as well that you could go back into as a data collector and try again. And hopefully that will be able to certify all of the data collectors. So at this point, that's the end of the EPAO trainings. What will be next is you will go through that certification process. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact any of us at the Children's Healthy Weight Research Group. Thank you.